Hello and welcome back to the Weekend Handyman. As I speak, it's July 4th weekend, specifically Sunday of July 4th weekend. Yesterday I had spent my day washing and waxing my daily, because it had been a while since I at least had waxed it. I've washed it here and there, but it did need a good waxing. Then I cleaned the interior too, but that's not important. What is important is this Jeep, which is why you're here. So today, unfortunately, I can't really do much to install the bumper because I don't have the nut strips to go into here. The trailer hitch that I had this setup since my Jeep didn't come from the factory with a trailer hitch or the towing package. It didn't come with nut strips in the back, or different nut strips than would be used for a trailer hitch or a skid plate or anything like that. So of course, aftermarket manufacturers know this is a problem, or could be a problem, so they include these plates and carriage bolts that you feed through in here to mount the trailer hitches, which is how I had the trailer hitch that was on here mounted, which is great, but it's actually a little bit weaker than having a full nut strip and nut certs or weld nuts to go into there. It is actually a stronger option because instead of grabbing each carriage bolt individually and pulling on it when you're using the trailer hitch for something, you're actually pulling the entire nut strip with it, and all of them become engaged all at once. So it's actually a stronger option. So that ultimately that's what I decided to go with, which means I needed to find somewhere to order these said nut strips, as they're called, and they're not here yet. So while that means I can't do anything to install the bumper or the skid plate, it gives me plenty of time to take care of all the painting of the bumper, so I can install it all at once and not have to be painting, installing things, and going back to painting and whatnot. I ended up getting nut strips that Ars Fabrication makes themselves, which is the same manufacturer that has the rear bumper and the front bumper. I could have gone with factory ones, or I could have gone with JCR ones. Well, I went with Ars Fabrication ones because I like the company, and they make good products, so I went with that one. But they're not here yet, like I said. So there are plenty of other things I need to take care of. Obviously, this area needs to get fixed up again a little bit, because when I had reinstalled the factory bumper, apparently some of the undercoating stuck to the Bose brackets, so I have to clean that up a little bit and do some painting. And I do have to do the thing where I have to cut down one of these bolts on each side so it doesn't hit my shackle right here. And I have some other grinding and whatnot to do. So this is the top adjustment portion of the tire carrier. That was the last thing I had put together to complete the tire carrier. As you've seen in one of my older videos or other videos, it needs to be cleaned up. Like, these welds need to get cleaned up and ground down, and then I need to, do the whole process to paint it. And then I need to also do all of that, minus the grinding. I've already done all that grinding, so it looks good. But I need to clean all of the entire thing up on that bumper over there, so I could also paint it. So that's how I'm going to spend the next couple of days, probably. There is also an actual mechanical issue that the Jeep has developed. Sometimes now when I start it, it'll immediately die and won't idle, and I'll have to hold the pedal at like 1500 or 2000 RPM, whatever the lowest I can hold it is, for a few minutes until it gets a little bit more warmed up, and even then sometimes it'll still die. And then sometimes to fix it, I'll have to wing her up to like 4 grand a couple times, like reset it or something, or clean the snots out of something. And apparently that could either be the air idle control or potentially the throttle positioning sensor. I'm not really sure which one. I haven't looked up what the prices are to actually repair those pieces, or if it's possible to clean them or make them work, to make them work again if they get clogged with carbon or something like that. But that's another problem I've developed with this one. Sometimes it'll be alright, sometimes it'll give me that kind of trouble. Even when I, get her going again good and drive around and drive, sometimes all of a sudden it'll stop and it'll want to die. I'll have to either throw it in neutral real quick to give it some gas or something, so I'll have to figure that out one of these days. Alright, so after using all of these implements of destruction, plus a little sandpaper by hand, bumper is ready for painting. Now I have gone ahead and of course cleaned her off with some lacquer thinner and brake cleaner. The brake cleaner and the spray can I find is way easier to do a bigger area than trying to wipe stuff down with the lacquer thinner or mineral spirits, whatever your chosen chemical is. As you could spray a big area and then wipe with the clean rag and it comes out nearly perfectly clean after the first swipe, where the lacquer thinner you have to work with it a little bit more. So I've done all that and I've sprayed it off with my air hose, and just now going to shake up my cans of primer and do coat of primer on the back. So for a big thing like this, what I've done is I will prime the back side first, 2 coats primer, then I will flip it, prime the front side with 2 coats. And the reason I do that is because if the primer ends up getting messed up by being flipped over and placed on top of something, it's the back side, it's not as important, whereas the front side is, the goal is with this method is to make sure that the front side is the last thing that gets primed or painted, because I'll end up painting the back side first with 2 coats of paint, then flip it and do the same on the front. So in the end, the back is what ends up getting laid down on. Now alternatively, of course, I could find or build something to hang it by, say, the D-ring mount points or something like that, but I find this method works good enough, because then I could touch up the back real quick if it's, you know, gets damaged all the way down to bare metal again. So that'll be probably the rest of my day. Alright, it is the next morning and I have pulled the bumper back out of the garage, placed it up on some blocks, and have just laid down the first coat of black paint. Gonna end up letting it dry for a while, as it's a rather thick coat of paint in a couple spots, but that was just to make sure that I could get in all the corners and crevices, as there's a lot of those on the back side of this bumper. But so I'm gonna let that dry for a while, do a second coat, and just like that, it's all covered in paint. So the point of this next sequence is just sort of to walk you quickly through the process that I've settled into on how I prep my metals for painting and whatnot. I'm sure I've gone through this before in a lot of older videos, but there's probably some new subscribers, and I've now have it down to pretty much a science. Its first step is just to scuff everything up with sandpaper. If you're lucky to use sandpaper, or a palm sander, go right ahead. If there's tight spots, you don't have a palm sander, sandpaper by hand just works just good. All the angle grinders for deep stuff, or maybe some weld splatter you need to get off. I also like to use it for edges like you're seeing now. And quickly after that, I use a wet rag that's been wetted with like a lacquer thinner, acetone, or mineral spirit, something like that. They'll all do the same thing. The point is just to clean any dirt and grime off, and oils especially. Of course, after you do that, try not to touch it with your bare hands, because you'll just be putting oils back on top of it. I have found, however, that if you wash your hands with a dish soap like an Ajax or a Dawn or something like that, since those are meant to cut through greases and oils that are on your dishes, it'll take the grease and oil off your fingers. So if you wash your hands before touching stuff that you're about to paint, you can kinda, grab them a little bit more freely than you normally would if you did nothing. Especially if you've been working with metal stuff and on your cars and whatnot, you probably have grease and oil from like your car anyways. So an Ajax or a Dawn will cut through that as well. Here I'm just doing the priming process. I do 2 coats of this rusty metal primer and then 2 coats of high-performance enamel. Nothing special. No, I've covered it before, but all I use to do this is just Rust-Oleum rusty metal primer and Rust-Oleum high-performance enamel. I've kind of just settled on 2 coats of primer and 2 coats of paint. Heavy coats, but just 2 of them for each. So that'll close out this part or installment of the Red Jeep project, the Beast Jeep, I don't know what you want to call it. Be sure to check us out on Facebook. Link is in the description. Be sure to subscribe. Leave me a comment. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me I'm great. I'll take either. A little bit of a short video this week. Usually I try and go for like 14 or 15 minutes. But there was a lot of different things that I filmed to get this bumper and skid plate and whatnot installed, so I had to break it in half somewhere. So I'll be starting next video with the clips you're seeing now. Maybe a little bit of preview, I don't know. But remember, check us on Facebook, subscribe, and leave a comment. Share it with your friends too. If there's anybody else out there you know who enjoys Jeeps, or likes building cars, or has any interest in it at all, send them a link.